And the Rabbi. Well, I got quite a shock last night. There I am minding my own business, and I get a text from Rabbi Friedman over here telling me about the topic, and I got to tell you, I was shocked. Rabbi Friedman's claim is maybe it's not the Arabs' fault what's going on in Israel right now. It's the Jews' fault.
Not maybe.
Not maybe. 100% it's the Jews' fault. Now, let me tell you, I was probably one of the most shocked guys in the world. The only guy more shocked than me was the guy behind me in line in Kroger who I asked to pinch me to make sure I wasn't dreaming. He was shocked.
Yeah,
he was a little shocked himself.
I wouldn't pinch you.
Yeah, no,
not in line. That's
he
for sure.
didn't either. He didn't either. And I'm saying to myself, something's wrong here. Either A, Rabbi Friedman, because of all the Star Wars things that are going on now, and in sympathy to the movie, you're just going over to the dark side. That's one. Or B, he got a call from Debbie Wasserman Schultz and gave you a speaking role at the next year's Democrat convention. I can't figure out what
to give the invocation.
Right, yes, I can't figure out where
in
you've
the name
gone.
Of God, if he, she exists.
He, she, it, and so I got to say, you know what? Say it ain't so, Rabbi Benjamin Rodham Friedman. So, it can't be true, can it?
Right. It's her birthday today, by the way.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Oh, happy birthday, Hillary. I didn't know that.
Hillary's,
Shout out to Hillary.
Hillary's birthday today.
I know she's watching.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm confused. I really am. I'm baffled and confused.
Right. Well, this is it's really interesting. This is one of those moments where we have a confluence, a point of intersection between the secular Jews and the Orthodox Jews, or maybe even the secular world, and then forget about Jews and Orthodox Jews. The secular world says, Kerry shot on off to the Middle East, and whoever the UN fellow is, it Ban Ki-moon, or did he switch over to a new guy?
I don't know. They're all the same.
Right. Okay.
They ain't Jews.
Either him or the new guy. But they're all saying, listen, this is Israel's fault. Israel's fault. It's the Jews' fault. They are riling everyone up, and they're making trouble, and so on and so forth. And, in a certain way, the Orthodox Jews are looking at it the same. Yeah, it is the Jews' fault.
Wow.
One thing they are in agreement on, they don't really blame the Arabs. They don't blame the Arabs. Now, there is a difference between the Orthodox Jews not blaming the Arabs and secular Jews not blaming the Arabs. The secular Jews perhaps blame the Arabs, but say that they're not responsible. The Jews don't blame the Arabs, but they say they are responsible. Now, how do you get that? That's
you got me a little confused here.
Not
right.
It's kind of contradictory. Okay, so the deal is like this: for a observant Jew who studies the Torah, so observant Jews are always looking. There's two tracks going on at all times throughout life. There's two things going on. Number one is God's running the world. That's number one. God's running the world. So all these things, these big trends that are going on, nations and wars and peace and movements and all the big global things, God's really in control of that.
Right.
He brings up this nation, he brings down that nation, he brings this nation back up, and he puts that one back down. And, the rise and fall and all these big things.
Justin Bieber's up, Justin Bieber's down.
Down, right, you got it, right. God's in control of that.
Right.
So that's the case. We know that there's this big picture that the Jews started off in Israel. They were sent into exile. And ultimately, the end of the show calls for them to be back in Israel.
Right.
Now, how is all that going to happen? There's a lot of manipulation of worlds and peoples and continents and nations and fortunes. So, from that perspective, the observant Jew, Torah-believing Jew, is in a way sort of sitting back and saying, we can function within this, but we can't really manipulate this system. God's got a big picture. For example, trying to delve into, let's say, something like the Holocaust.
Right.
Right. How are you going to figure that out? Now, you can write books about it and analyze underlying causes. What could have been done? Could the Holocaust have been prevented? Was someone responsible for it? I mean, you can blame Hitler. Hard to just blame Hitler. What about all the other people that supported him? How could that have happened? It almost defies any rationale to figure it out. And we say, yeah, it really does defy any rationale. It really can't be figured out because really God must have had that as part of his plan. As difficult as that might seem to me, God has that as part of his plan. He's doing that because he's got to maneuver things around so it comes out right in the end. And we believe that in the end, it'll all come out right, and all of those episodes will have played a crucial role in getting us to the end point, even though we, for sure, cannot figure it out. How in the world could that have been beneficial? And the truth is, everything that's going on now with the Arabs and all the difficulties and everything like that, we can't figure out exactly how this is working out, but there is a purpose to it. And exactly what's going on, look at Russia and the United States and all this stuff. We can't figure all this stuff out. How come these things happen at such and such a time and all this? Way beyond us. So that's one really, really, really big picture. So an Orthodox just sort of sits back and he says, listen, I'm going to try to do my best. I'm going to try to get through this. But as far as the big picture goes, solving the Middle East problem, the truth is it's politically an intractable problem.
But does the Orthodox Jew try? Does he try to solve the problem?
So I think the Orthodox Jew tries to work towards whichever solution will be the most expedient and get him the most cover right now. Right. But not really believing that we're going to solve it one way or another. It's kind of intractable. The truth is, everyone in the world should realize it's intractable. Stop for just for a minute and think, just for people that don't come at it from a religious worldview. Let's picture that there's no such thing as Jews. Let's picture the Middle East right now without Jews. There are no Jews. Right. No Israel, no Jews.
Right.
What do you think it looks like?
A lot of sand.
Yeah, a lot of sand. You know, I think it looks like a lot of blood.
A lot of blood. Oh, yeah, they kill each other. Right?
I mean, Sunnis, Shia, they are going at it. Right. They are going at it. They are like ripping up. You know, you think Syria? That's going to be kid stuff as to what's going to be going on over there.
That's how it always has been.
I mean, that, you know, and what would they be doing? Well, there'd be this little strip called Israel. And who do you think would be in control of that? Well, it'd probably be some huge war. Maybe Jordan would be laying claim to it. And, of course, I suppose that the Syrians or the Iranians would be coming down from the north laying claim to that. And there would be, like, massive bloodshed.
Maybe they just blame the Amish.
Right. Right. So they would have it out. I mean, I actually think the situation would be worse without the Jews there. But the Jews are perpetually blamed. So, you know, I think anyone would realize that it's an intractable situation. And it defies a political solution. As much as everyone will try and every president comes along and thinks he's going to solve it, I think the only one is, let's say you take a guy like Putin who's a big pragmatist. I don't think he thinks he's going to solve anything.
I think he's
just in there to get his share.
What he wants,
he just wants to make sure he's getting his share of the pie. But, you know, solving the problem, it's not going to happen. So he's a pragmatist. And I think that Orthodox Jews look at it from that perspective. Now, at the same time, while all this stuff is going on, there's also the me role. There's me, there's you. Every single individual. So, well, God's working on two channels at once.
Right.
Every time he looks at me as part of the body Israel, big Israel.
Right.
And then there's me, little old me, Benjamin Friedman, who is doing his thing, trying to get through today. And God's judging me, and he wants to know, I'm going to be a good guy, or I'm going to be a bad guy today, and how is he going to relate to me accordingly? One of the things that God does is sometimes he needs to wake us up, give us a little prod, give us a little wake-up call and say, listen, you got to focus yourself on the right things in life and not on the wrong things. And sometimes he'll send along a problem like this, which is really, on a personal level, very intractable also. I mean, think about this. If you're in Israel, and I've been speaking to people in Israel, so you're in Israel and you want to go to the store. So when you walk in the store, you're looking all around you, and you're looking into everybody's eyes that's walking next to you, and you're trying to say, like, is this person Jewish? Or are they an Arab? Are they an Arab dressed up like a Jew? And, you know, when you're standing nearby, like my son said, like, everyone's trying to stay 10 feet away from everyone else.
Right.
And it's really difficult, especially because that's kind of a pedestrian country, you know? And exactly for that reason, I spoke to another guy, and he said, like, you know, he lives not too far from where he works, but he calls a cab.
Wow.
He's just calling a cab now to just go back and forth. This is costing him money, but he's afraid to walk in the street. So he figures he's safer in a cab.
Well, thank God all the Arab cab drivers are in New York,
Yeah, right.
not in Jerusalem.
Yeah,
In trouble.
right. And by the way, and they know how to check them out because in Jerusalem there are a lot of Arab cab drivers, but the locals know how to like size it up really quick before they get in the car to see who's driving the car. But they, as a matter of fact, what you usually do is you got the name of a cab company and you call to have them send you a cab, and you know which
who they are.
company you can trust.
Right.
So it's really creepy. So it's an intractable problem, and it makes life like totally unmanageable. I just read a lengthy interview with the mayor of Jerusalem, and he's talking about like what a big problem this is and what they're trying to do. But bottom line is, he didn't have any suggestions. He didn't know what to do either. And I don't think anyone's even blaming him for not knowing what to do, because he didn't know what to do.
I don't have an answer for that.
He didn't know what to do. The police didn't really. I mean, I read the whole article. We're doing this, we're doing that, but in the end, he's not really doing anything. I mean, he's just trying to do some stuff, but no one has any solution. He's talking to people, and he said we're talking to like leaders in the Arab Jerusalem community, and he says, it's tough for them also because they can't control all these youth and everything like that. Well, okay, good, but what's it doing? It's not doing anything. So on this very personal level, each and every person has to stop and think, okay, there's this big problem, and then there's this small problem. I'm having a hard time getting from my house to the grocery store.
Right.
Right? How do I deal with that? What does that say to me? So for everyone, every single individual who is in that situation, who knows, loves someone in that situation, who cares about someone in that situation, so everyone's got to say, listen, this is also an intractable situation. And I know God's got his big plan, but he's got to fix this thing because I need to get to the grocery store. So what's God saying to me? So perhaps God's saying that you need to wake up and you need to get in touch, as like this sort of like call God,
Right.
For a solution, call God.
Right.
You want to get from here to the grocery store? Call God. The mayor of Jerusalem doesn't have a solution. Mr. Netanyahu does not seem to have a solution. Not blaming him. Don't think that there is a solution. Not blaming Netanyahu. Not blaming the mayor. Not blaming the police. Not blaming anyone. I don't think there is a solution, so why should they be expected to have one? But each and every individual Jew knows that I got to be a better God-fearing Jew because that's the only way I'm going to get my solution.
Well, I understand, and that makes sense, and I get that for the overall solution. Okay, you here today in America, you can pray harder, you can do more mitzvot. They can do that in Israel. The problem is the guy in Israel is going from his home to the grocery store. Is he responsible for the rest of you? Because listen, you can pray as much as you want, but someone, unfortunately, God's going to pick someone to get stabbed tomorrow, and so. As you say, God has two different roles. One is the individual person, and one is the community of Jews. It's kind of tough because you're kind of stuck in the middle there.
Absolutely. And God is, if someone is going to be stabbed tomorrow,
is he the deserving guy, by the way?
So then all we know is that God picked him. And to tell you the truth, even if God picked him, I'm not saying because he's the loser, he came up with the short straw, right?
Right.
We don't blame him for being the loser. As a matter of fact, I've been reading about some of these people who have been victims. They seem like really good, upstanding people. Like, as a matter of fact, even like admirable people. Not the type of losers. And it's not like God has a bunch of losers and criminals who are getting stabbed. Right. It's like good, upstanding people. So God has his reasons, and we know that he does. So we pray as follows: say, God, I'm going out today. It's dangerous in the streets. I don't have a choice because I've run out of food at home. I got to go to the grocery store, right? Now, I can't just sit here in the apartment and starve to death. I must go to the grocery store. I've got to go out in the street to go to the grocery store. On my way to the grocery store, God, and in the grocery store, God, protect me. And if you have decided that today my number is up, then I submit to the fact that it's your will, and you've decided that that's best for me. But I'm going to try to do my best, but I understand that you are calling the shots here, totally. And therefore, like I said, I'm not blaming the Arab. Now, I do hold him responsible, though. I hold him responsible.
Is the Arab being manipulated into stabbing? Yeah, that's kind of taking away the
So it's interesting, but I do hold him responsible, yes. Because, and this gets us back to Pharaoh,
Right, I was just going to
Right, back to Pharaoh. Right, comes right back to Pharaoh or Hitler or anyone. Yes, or even the doctor who botched up, and the patient died.
Right.
Okay. Well, listen, if the patient's number wasn't up, then God wouldn't let the patient die. So I one time said this to a doctor. Doctor said, well, sorry, obviously it was this person. The doctor was caring for the person died. So, well, obviously it was their time. So I said, yeah, it is obviously their time, but I wouldn't be so happy to have been the one that God chose to be the messenger for that, right?
But is the doctor
you don't want to be,
for that?
yes,
or did God move his hands to the
responsible,
left,
and that's why I say, not caused by, but responsible, because God also picked who's going to do it.
Okay.
God says, okay, this guy's number is up, for whatever my reasons are. Now I'm going to decide who's going to do it. Well, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. It's not just like he just picked someone out of a hat. He picked that person particularly. Well, that person, that means because that person was a guilty person, he picked them to perpetrate the act. And therefore, if someone turns around and pulls a gun on that guy and kills him, after he either did or attempted to do his evil, he deserves that too. Yes, it's true. God let him do it, but he's guilty or responsible for all of his actions at the very same time.
Well, so another solution. I like your solution. Okay, before I go to the grocery store, I pray to God, please don't kill him. Don't let me stabbed. I'm going to the grocery store, and if it's my turn, it's my number. It's your choice.
I'm in your hands.
Now, solution number 2. That's solution number 1. Solution number 2 is you take a Glock, you stick it in your pocket, you go with you, you keep your hand in your pocket, and you look down the street when you're walking, and anybody comes within 10 feet of you, you take it and you shoot the guy.
Right.
Does that work better or worse?
As a matter of fact, I thought of that. I think both of them can work in tandem.
Okay, maybe.
I actually thought a step further. I thought people should wear T-shirts that in Arabic say, if you get within 10 feet of me, I'll kill you.
That's even a better idea. That's actually a better idea.
Just write it in Arabic on your shirt. If you get within 10 feet of me, I kill you.
Well, so if I weigh the two choices here, and I'm not talking from secular religious, does God not want me? Okay, but Jeff, I'm with you, but help me out a little bit. Bring a gun with you to the store today.
Yes, I absolutely can. I absolutely agree with that, and I think that people can and perhaps should do that. However, you also have to remember that that's not going to be flawless.
No, it's not.
And the guy can come up from behind you when you never even saw him, and a person can be stabbed to death, and his gun is in the holster the whole time. As a matter of fact, one of the stabbings that happened in the old city, Jerusalem, a guy jumped a couple, and he stabbed the man. So someone in a house heard the screaming, and he came running out to help. And the assailant stabbed the guy who came running out to help. But the guy came running out to help had a gun. He stabbed the guy, and then he took the guy's gun, and then he shot some people.
Okay, that's not good.
So you see, that having a gun is not like, sometimes it'll help. Maybe it'll be a deterrent, but it can work against you, I think. I don't know as much, how much, but it can work against you. It can go either way.
But my only point is, I have a hand in this a little bit, or do I not? I don't know. Do I have a hand in a little bit here? Maybe I bring a gun. Maybe he's about to kill somebody else, and I kill the guy. I mean, I'm just saying maybe you could be totally, completely laid back, as you say, and say, God, please protect me, and do nothing. Or maybe God wants you to help out a little bit.
Yeah, so, I would think you could try to do what you could do. And here's where you run the risk. Because just like many people that spend so much time talking about political solutions and military solutions and all this type of stuff, sometimes all those solutions distract a person from the first part that we talked about, the praying.
No, I'm with you there.
And you spend a lot of time, you spend more time going to the gun store, standing in line at the gun store, checking out guns, buying the gun, going to get shooting lessons, doing all that stuff. Right? And you also throw in a little prayer here and there.
Right.
So you can end up, when it's all said and done, I spent 29 hours being armed, and I also offered 20 minutes of prayer.
That's true.
So that's why it can sometimes be a distraction. Now, I do think that you could have, designated people and more of a presence and all that. They talked about, they asked the mayor in this interview I read, why they don't put armed guards, armed police in front of all the synagogues. because those are gathering places. We know the whole episode that happened some months ago.
Right.
At least in gathering places. So he said no, they don't do it. He said that there are 1,900 kindergartens in Jerusalem, and only 20 kindergartens in Jerusalem have an armed guard in front of them.
I think.
So he said, we're not doing that. We're not going in that direction because you can't put armed guards everywhere, and we're just not going to do it. Well, okay. I mean, maybe it's impractical.
I think
I don't blame the guy.
More armed guards.
Maybe that's what they were asking him. They said, "Why aren't you doing it?" He said, "I don't know what he really said. Maybe it's impractical." I couldn't even tell what he was saying actually, but he said, "We're not going to do that. Police don't want to do it, and we're not going to do that." Like I said, I don't blame him because I don't think that there is a solution. I do think that you could take whatever necessary measures and precautions, and maybe you take a cab home instead of walking the street or whatever you do.
Right.
But the bottom line is, you got to say that prayer before you go out. You got to try to do good. You gotta say, God, I'm trying to be on the good side, and you got to watch over me.
I mean, I like that, and I agree with it. But I just going to say we could take this situation. It doesn't have to be just talking about the streets of Jerusalem. We can talk about you driving back to the office, to the shul.
You got it.
I get you need to pray to make sure you're doing okay, but you also got to talking on your cell phone, texting on the phone is probably not a good idea either when you're driving back.
Absolutely. Yeah, listen, anyone that merges onto 285 knows that you got to pray.
It's just true, and I'm with you there.
Right.
But put the cell phone down and maybe wake up a little bit there. And,
right.
Right.
So the bottom line is what I'm saying is that when something like this happens, and if you look back at it, there've been a lot of these things where these things flared up and then they sort of just petered out. And we're never really sure where they came from, and we're never really sure where they went away to until they flared up again. And we don't really know. Well, what was it like this time around? Because a rumor came out that the Jews are trying to take over the Temple Mount or something like that. Right. Okay, it just flares up and then it sort of disappears. What makes it flare up? What makes it disappear? So religious Jews say what makes it flare up is that God gets a sense that people are not paying attention to him and they're kind of losing their bearings. What makes it disappear is that people got the message and started paying attention.
Well, then here's the ultimate question. Has God just created Arabs just for Jews? Has he created Arabs just to be the nemesis of Jews, to wake us up every once in a while? I'm going to say, I don't want to be rude and say I can't see any other purpose, but is that the reason that Arabs are here? I mean, think about it. They're in the holiest place in the world there, and they pretty much just serve the purpose of tweaking the Jews here. Well, and according to you, maybe just tweaking us back toward God. Is that's what their only purpose is?
You are as familiar as I am with reading you keep up with your weekly Torah portion,
I do.
And you know that Abraham had a son named Ishmael, and Ishmael plays a whole role in the story. And Ishmael is there. Ishmael gives his younger brother Isaac a hard time, and then Ishmael is banished. And the Torah puts a lot of attention about that banishing, and he's there. Right. And you might say to yourself, why was he even in the story? It seems like
that's a good point.
He's just a nuisance in the story to eat up an extra chapter or two. In the end, it doesn't seem to have any significance. He does have significance. He plays an important role. He plays an important role for Isaac, and actually, in the end of the story, he ultimately does have a role in the story. If you look to all the way to the end of the story, when Abraham dies,
right,
it says that Abraham was buried by Isaac and Ishmael, his sons.
Right.
And the rabbis point out that Ishmael comes back into the fold and recognizes the primacy of his younger brother, Isaac. But he does have a role, ultimately. So they're not to be dismissed, not to be totally disregarded. It's hard to see when you're in the middle of it, how it's going to play out. Ultimately, we have this picture of how it's all going to be resolved, but it's really hard to see how it's playing out right now when you're in the middle of it. But we do believe that there is a role, otherwise they wouldn't be around.
Is he just that nuisance that he was in the original story?
Yeah, maybe just to make Isaac and his children earn it. Maybe
pushes us back down the right path at the end.
Yeah, I have a feeling that it's more than just he's more than just like the sparring partner.
Right.
He's really there's ultimately a role for him to play in the big picture. But, until it's over, it's hard to say.
Yes, we won't know.
Never having been there, we'll have to just wait till the end and find out who did it.
Got to wait to the end to see. Well, in the meantime, I mean, it still would be, as an individual, I know sometimes we got to look at ourselves as a group of Jews, but as an individual Jew, it would be a tough time to be in Jerusalem or in Israel right now, because you got a lot to worry about. And, the support of the world, as we talked about last week, is kind of disintegrated if it was ever there to begin with.
Right.
And, so they're kind of on their own. So, you know what? Maybe you're right. The only thing left to do is to pray.
I told you about the soldiers that were dancing down the steps of the Kotel, and they were singing, "We have no one to rely on but our Father in heaven." And they got their right idea.
You know what? I can't argue with you, and I won't argue with you. I'm not arguing with you at all. I agree with everything you say. All right, well, maybe next week we'll come back, and maybe things will be better. Maybe you're right.
God willing.
God willing. Next week.
All the Jews, I'm sure, first of all, they'll watch this.
Yeah,
and Jews
absolutely.
all around the world will get the message. It's time to do an extra mitzvah, time to connect up to something really Jewish, connect up to God, and by next week, God will have it all straightened out.
I'm with you. God willing.
Okay.
All right, see you next week.